It started as a solo hike through the Arctic silence, a chance to film another peaceful escape for his growing audience. But when rescuers finally found Storm Debuel, his body was frozen, his legs stiff with ice, and his nose shattered from a fall. He'd been just a day's walk from his car, and still didn't make it. The 22-year-old Belgian YouTuber had survived 5 months of wild northern expeditions, but not the night of October 29, 2024, when a sudden Lapland blizzard buried his tent, scattered his gear, and pushed the temperature down to negative 18 degrees Celsius with wind chill. Storm had messaged his grandmother, "It's snowing heavily here, but don't worry, I'll survive." He didn't. This is a video about creators who chased nature, truth, or thrills. Viewer discretion is advised. In the mountains of Jinshuan County, China, on the night of September 14th, 2020, a young woman named Lamu began another live broadcast, as she had done so many times before. She wasn't known for scandals or viral stunts. Her fans admired her for something much rarer, her sincerity. In her 30s, Lamu was a Tibetan vlogger who filmed her daily life in the countryside, gathering herbs, cooking over an open fire, wearing traditional clothing, always smiling, always peaceful. Her videos were calm, gentle, and authentic. But that night, reality turned cruel. In the middle of her stream, the video abruptly cut to black, but the microphone remained on. Then came the unmistakable sounds of struggle. Then the screams of a woman in terror. Her ex-husband burst into the house. He brought gasoline, poured it on her, and lit a match. The fire consumed her in seconds. The screams echoed through the phones and screens of her stunned followers. She was rushed to the hospital with burns covering over 90% of her body. Despite the doctor's efforts, she held on for 2 weeks until, on September 30th, she succumbed to her injuries. Lamu had reported him before. She filed police reports, warned friends and relatives, and even fled his abuse twice, but officials dismissed it as a family matter, and nothing was done. Her death was met with an outpouring of grief. Hashtags demanding justice flooded Chinese social media and were just as quickly deleted. Lamu's final live broadcast wasn't just the end of her story. It became a terrifying symbol of what happens when the people who are supposed to protect you refuse to listen. She was trying to survive, struggling to speak, while the world stood by and watched her die for it. Some tragedies unfold silently. Others are amplified, monetized, and encouraged until someone dies on camera, and it's too late to ask why no one stopped it. On January 28, 2021, in the city of Smolensk, Russia, a 60-year-old man named Yuri Desheshkin sat down in front of a webcam. He was called Grandpa online. Yuri never set out to be satisfied. He didn't start a live broadcast. He didn't come up with a task, and he certainly didn't write a script for what happened next. That role belonged to someone else, a YouTube host who had made a name for himself through humiliation, inviting homeless people into his apartment, displaying bottles, and offering cash in exchange for suffering. Yuri needed the money, so when he was handed a bottle filled with 1.5 liters of vodka, he drank it without hesitation. The more he gulped, the faster the donations came. The chat erupted in applause, laughter, and cheers, and the camera kept rolling, not out of cruelty, but because it always kept rolling, no matter what was happening. Somewhere between the last few sips, Yuri fainted, fell to the floor, and didn't move. On the screen, the audience continued to watch, not knowing if this was part of the act. No one called for help. No one intervened. The stream continued until the silence became too uncomfortable to ignore. And even then, it wasn't the host pulling the plug, but the silence that finally made someone react. By the time the paramedics arrived, Yuri was gone. But it wasn't just the alcohol that was to blame. It was the audience, cheering, donating, demanding more. That pushed him toward the edge and never once thought of stopping. No one was held accountable for the incident, and no charges were filed. The channel shut down, and Yuri's name was added to the ever-growing list because he wasn't the first to die on camera, and unfortunately, he won't be the last. The pursuit of attention comes in many forms, some desperate, others audacious. But ultimately, the rules are the same. Make it exciting, make it dangerous, and if you fall, the camera will still roll. In the rural area of Metcalfe, Georgia, in March 2016, 3 men climbed to the top of a television tower, preparing to jump. One of them was Brandon Jackson, a base jumper, thrill seeker, and amateur streamer. His goal that day was as reckless as it was obvious, to jump from the top of the tower, broadcast the stunt live, and land with footage that would become an internet legend. He hadn't planned to do it alone. He was accompanied by 2 experienced jumpers, both of whom had done it thousands of times. But this time, something went wrong. He jumped first, then suddenly disappeared from sight. His friends searched the nearby fields, screaming, but Brandon was nowhere to be seen. Police later found his body near a quarter mile from the tower. There was no technical problem, no equipment malfunction, just a miscalculation. One small mistake, and Brandon fell to his death. The live broadcast ended without any answers. Brandon's story is not a story of showmanship gone wrong. It is a reminder that gravity is irrelevant to confidence, that even experienced risk-takers are one decision away from never coming back. It was supposed to be the biggest political event of the season. On October 30th, 2022, Pakistani journalist Sadaf Naeem was covering the Second Azadi March, a massive demonstration led by former Prime Minister Imran Khan, when she tried to get an exclusive. For more than a decade, Sadaf had worked at Channel 5, chasing fleeting headlines and political snippets in a field where being first meant everything. She was the sole breadwinner for her family, a mother of 2, married to a photojournalist, and was known for her determination to get close, to get the story no one else could. That day, she tried to do what she had done before. She ran alongside the slow-moving container ship carrying Imran Khan and tried to climb aboard, and it was all under the strain. But something went wrong. Whether she slipped or was pushed is up for debate. All that is known is that she fell, and the truck, massive and heavy, rolled over her. She was pronounced dead upon arrival at the hospital. The footage and the reaction of other journalists at the scene shocked the nation. Some called it a preventable accident. Others called it the inevitable result of a culture in which journalists are expected to take risks without protection, training, or support. Sadaf's death brought the rally to a halt, drawing sympathy and shock. But it also raised a deeper question. How many more journalists will die in the pursuit of news? In the attention economy, visibility is currency. But sometimes the price of being seen or remembered far outweighs the reward. On July 18, 2019, in Hefei, China, a man known only by his surname, Song, spun a plastic challenge wheel in front of his webcam. He was 35 years old, and he was live streaming to about 15,000 followers on Douyu, a Chinese platform known for its outrageous content. His niche was dangerous risk-taking, consuming unfamiliar or unhealthy food live, often unsupervised, often without restraint. That night's wheel included vinegar, beer, beiju, raw eggs, and something much more dangerous, live millipedes and geckos. When the arrow landed on them, he didn't hesitate, but ate both on camera, laughing, interacting with his audience, hoping to share them and get advice. 2 days later, on July 20th, his girlfriend found him dead in his apartment. The stream ended, but his computer was still on, and his desk was still littered with the remains of the challenge. Although the autopsy was never released, the probable cause of death was poisoning by poisonous millipedes or reptilian bacteria. The fact is that millipede venom contains powerful neurotoxins that can cause paralysis, respiratory failure, and even cardiac arrest. And some geckos carry harmful bacteria, such as salmonella, which can lead to serious infection if ingested alive. Later, Chinese authorities cracked down on extreme eating content. The death of the son wasn't loud or cinematic. It was quiet, lonely. The final scene of the play, he thought, would make him go viral. It's easy to mock people who are desperate for attention, but sometimes you're actually watching someone play with their own life, because the silence after the broadcast is the only time anyone is actually listening. He was 35 years old, and to most of his online audience, he was known simply as Poshbrid, a tireless voice in the gaming world, a streamer who seemed to live entirely inside his screen. For years, Brian Vigna had dedicated himself to broadcasting his life in snippets, hour after hour of gameplay, casual conversation, silence, laughter, and exhaustion, live streamed to a loyal and growing following. On February 19, 2017, he went live with a specific purpose: a 24-hour charity stream to raise money for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. It wasn't his first marathon stream. He'd done it before, but this one was heavier, slower, and more demanding than usual. As the stream progressed, his voice became quieter and his movements more mechanical, but the camera kept rolling and his chat remained active, with over 200 viewers still tuned in, watching his every move in real time. But the 22nd hour, Brian's exhaustion was evident. His speech was slurred, and he seemed to be struggling to stay alert. Eventually, he mumbled something about a quick smoke break, then disappeared from the frame. The stream ran on, empty, silent, expectant. Minutes passed, then hours, but he didn't return. At first, viewers waited, thinking he had fallen asleep or taken a longer break than he planned. But the longer the silence lasted, the more uneasy they became. Members of his community began messaging him, trying to reach him on Discord, and Brian didn't respond. Then, the excitement turned into fear. One of his regular viewers sent a direct message, and then, finally, a response came, but not from Brian. The police officer responded via his Discord account. Brian Vigna was found unresponsive in his Virginia Beach home. He had suffered a fatal heart attack. Brian's body was beyond its capacity after countless sleepless hours in front of a glowing screen. Eventually, the stream was taken offline, the video deleted, and the chat closed. But for the hundreds who watched that night, it wasn't the gameplay or the jokes that stayed with them, but the silence. The next stream also ended in silence, but this time it wasn't exhaustion that killed the host. It was 1 second of misplaced confidence, broadcast live for all to see. He was just 17 years old, a Detroit teenager known online as Rio Juncho, an up-and-coming rapper trying to make a name for himself in a world where image, bravado, and presence are often more important than substance. Like many of his peers, he turned to Instagram Live not just to connect with fans, but also to show off, to perform. On April 7th, 2021, Rio began a live broadcast from his home. In the video, he recited a few lines, pointed a gun at the camera, and smiled as if it were all part of the act. At one point, he pulled the magazine and pointed the gun at his own head, presumably thinking it was empty. But he didn't realize, or perhaps didn't know, that a bullet could still be in the chamber even after the clip was removed. The guy pulled the trigger, and it went off. Viewers of the stream saw him fall, but for a few minutes they weren't sure if it was staged, a prank, a skit, something shocking. But the silence that followed made it clear, this wasn't a performance, this was real. Medics were called, but by the time they arrived, Rio was already gone. He had been shot in the head. There were no signs that he had intended to harm himself, no cries for help, no messages of despair. He was just a teenager trying to impress, to entertain, and in the process, he made a mistake that turned out to be irreversible. His death quickly spread across social media, leaving an avalanche of tributes, disbelief, and a wave of reflection. Many questioned how something so avoidable could have happened on such a public stage. Others called it a wake-up call, not just about gun safety, but about the growing pressure on young people to make every moment count, no matter the risk. The stories may differ depending on the location, the context, the circumstances, but they share the same brutal logic. When life becomes a spectacle, the line between performance and reality can disappear in an instant. On July 10th, 2021, Sophia Chung, a 32-year-old influencer from Hong Kong, went hiking with 3 friends at Hop Hok Lai Park, a place known for its rugged trails, picturesque cliffs, and breathtaking views that fill social media feeds. For Sophia, it was another opportunity to capture the kind of content her followers had been waiting for. After all, her Instagram feed was filled with high-stakes photos. Photos of her perched on cliff edges, dangling over waterfalls, and posing in places where the scenery was as dangerous as it was stunning. The tension was her aesthetic, awe combined with beauty, risk combined with serenity. But that day, at Qingdai Creek Falls, while trying to pose for a selfie on a narrow ledge, Sophia tripped and fell about 5 meters into the rock pool below. Her friends immediately called an ambulance. Paramedics arrived quickly and rushed her to Pamela Jude Nethersole Eastern Hospital. But her injuries were too severe and, despite all efforts, she was pronounced dead on arrival. The paradox is that the fall did not occur from a cliff or the top of a skyscraper. It was only 5 meters, about from a second-floor balcony. But this was enough to be fatal. Sophia's death resonated far beyond Hong Kong, especially among government officials. It has reignited a global debate about the risks people take in pursuit of the perfect photo, and how far some are willing to go for likes, followers, and viral moments. Every day we witness tragedy, someone vanishing mid-broadcast, a final image taken seconds before disaster. We scroll past, thinking it's rare, thinking it could never happen to us. But each of these stories began the same way, with a choice that felt harmless. And by the time they realized it was too far, there was no turning back. And if you ever wonder how far is too far, take note. Most of them were sure they hadn't crossed the line. We warned you to watch closely. Now, we ask you to think carefully. Have you ever been closer to the line than you'd like to admit?